Welcome into K-State Online. I am Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway. We are here on a Friday, closing out the week, ready to move on and see everything that we get this weekend. K-State basketball, both the men and women, in action on Saturday, basically consecutively. If you live within an hour of Manhattan, you're probably going to be able to watch the entire women's game. And then as soon as it's over, get on the road, get to Bramlage, watch that. And you have a nice little basketball, I guess, appetizer before I'm sure most of you watch the Chiefs on Sunday. So pretty good weekend in store for K-State fans, at least until the basketball games get started. Then it could be a miserable experience because, yes, they are playing teams and in situations where they are beatable. For the men, that's basically anytime they step on the floor. But for the women, as we know, Aoka Lee is going to be out for a while, and they are going on the road to Colorado, which, everybody, altitude, that's a tough deal. And bad memories the last time the K-State women met Colorado because the Buffs bounced them in the second round of the NCAA tournament in Bramlage last year. And then on the men's side, yes, K-State went 2-0 against West Virginia last year, but the last time that these two teams played, it was maybe the most frustrating K-State game that anybody had ever watched under Jerome Tang up until that point, because K-State had like a 21-point lead in the second half, and Kirk Kriisa got real hot, and West Virginia stormed back to force overtime. K-State did survive, though. So those are the opponents on tap for K-State this weekend. Are we looking at – we'll talk about basketball in a little bit, but you thinking 2-0 basketball Saturday for the Cats, Drew?
I'm feeling great. Pick and preview for the men, I picked a win. I feel like the women will win because this Colorado team isn't as good as the one that they had last year.
That's true.
So I'm feeling a 2-0 weekend. And why not? Feeling good on this Friday.
All right. Love the optimism. That's great. Somebody's got to provide it. And we'll get to basketball in a little bit. Also have some other things K-State related that we'll get into. But the main emphasis today is going to be about football. And we are now under 7 months away from the Aer Lingus College Football Classic, K-State, Iowa State kicking off the season. I would think we're probably getting close to knowing a TV partner and a kick time for that, which I think it'll probably be 11 noon back here in Kansas when the game kicks off on the 23rd. But we did start to see some of the bigger week one matchups were announced yesterday. Miami, Notre Dame are going to play the Sunday game to start 2025 this year in week one. TCU just continues to find themselves in the middle of the biggest spectacle in college football to start seasons. They are on the road in Chapel Hill Monday night for Bill Belichick's debut as the North Carolina head coach. And there are a few others that I think kind of trickled in where we know, okay, this is going to be the marquee game. So I'm hopeful that we're going to get some knowledge there for K-State and Iowa State on if that game ends up being owned by ESPN or Fox. For context, the last time that Fox had a team that was over there in this or had like the option, that was obviously the Big Ten. So they've done it before. ESPN has obviously done it numerous times, I think, and NBC has done one as well. So it's been all over the place with these teams in these international games. So really anyone, it's just going to come down to who has the selection there, and we'll see.
I'm going to take a bet and say that it's ESPN because I feel like they'll want to have it because I imagine that game day will go to Ireland as well.
That would be the hope for probably everybody involved, that you get that kind of exposure. And if you are wanting to be over there because you say, oh, Wildcat football kicking off 2025 season in the Aer Lingus College Football Classic in Dublin, Ireland, this is your chance to cheer on the Cats as they take on Big 12 rival Iowa State on international turf and make history. Visit cats2ireland.com for information on official travel, hospitality, and airfare packages. That's Cats, the number 2, Ireland.com. There's also good news for those of you who said, hey, I'm my own travel agent. Step off. Good luck. I mean, if you're the one doing it, I'm sure you're great at it. If it is a spouse or another family member doing it, you might just want to make sure that they're doing it okay, or say, hey, you know what? You step off. I'm going to cats2ireland.com to get this done. But if you are brave and if you are just going to make your way over there, maybe you're taking the second coming of the Titanic or whatever to get across the Atlantic Ocean, The good news is single game tickets for the Aer Lingus College Football Classic are now available exclusively to Hearn Fund members. Act fast as this pre-sale window is open through 5 p.m. on Thursday, January 30th. Remaining tickets will go on sale online only to the public starting at 5 p.m. on Monday, February 3rd through the K-State Athletics ticket office. Phone and in-person orders will be available starting at 8:30 a.m. on Tuesday, February 4th. Visit kstatesports.com to learn more on that. So, couple of different ways for everybody to get their tickets secured for K-State, Iowa State. And these are two teams that there are a lot of expectations for, good or bad. And we're going to talk a lot about the disrespect that it feels like K-State is getting. And maybe not even so much disrespect for K-State, but just flat out idiocy and looniness from the people that are making the too early lists this season. And there's a number of ways that we can go through this, and I've got them all ready to go. We'll talk about it, but it is just the quintessential offseason for K-State football to not be properly getting the love and respect that they probably deserve relative to their peers in the Big 12 or other comparable programs. And then we'll look at some of this and everybody will go, really? They're ahead of K-State, or they're 10 spots ahead of K-State? That quarterback is supposedly better than Avery Johnson. We got a lot of places we can go with this. But in general, Drew, have you been surprised at the way K-State has been perceived relative to the rest of the Big 12 throughout this offseason already?
Honestly, no. I mean, even winning 9 games and returning a majority of the offense, and then kind of figuring everything out defensively in the transfer portal, which has been a pretty good haul. I'm not super surprised. I'm a little bit more surprised about other teams in the Big 12. Like, I know that we'll get into it, but right, I saw a list that had BYU in the top 10, and it's like, what are you doing there? And then I've seen Arizona State and K-State being like 5 or 6 notches apart, and it's like Arizona State's probably losing more impactful players than K-State did. So I think that it's not really surprising, but it's more of like these lists are really for us to kind of go at them, is what it seems like. And this is another one, like, not even on topic, but the shortstop list that the MLB put out that had Bobby Witt Jr. fourth. Holy moly.
It's been a tough week for the Shredder because, yeah, they called Bobby Witt Jr. the 4th best shortstop in baseball, who, you know, outside of Aaron Judge, had the best season last year for a player when you combine the fact that, he was also a Gold Glove shortstop. And, you know, the New York Yankees, probably a playoff team even without Aaron Judge, although it would have gotten a little bit dicier for him. The Royals have zero chance at being a playoff team if Bobby Witt Jr. didn't do what he did last year. That was insane. You know, I was ready to go to Twitter when I saw that because I was putting my daughter to bed, and I see it come across that Gunnar Henderson's number 1. So I was immediately ready to go and be like, okay, this is stupid. Gunnar Henderson is not better than Bobby Witt Jr. And then I see the full list. I'm like, he's not number 2. He's not number 3. He's 4th. I mean, I didn't know that algorithms and computers could smoke crack, but the Shredder was smoking crack when they made that list. And then, you know, they said, we're going to double down. The Shredder continues to be as dumb as possible. They had Juan Soto as the 3rd best right fielder in baseball, which, if you're paying attention, Juan Soto was the 3rd best player in the American League last year behind Aaron Judge and Bobby Witt Jr. So I have a tough time figuring out how he would be in 3rd. But yes, I'm glad you brought that up because we can all just be mad about every list that comes out right now. List season is really stupid, but it is a lot of fun to say, hey, you're dumb. Here's my dumb attack of why you're dumb. You know, that's essentially what this is. We all have our opinions, most of which are going to be wrong because we don't know what the heck's going to happen 7 months from now when the season kicks off. But we all like to think we do, and we like to think that you're wrong, I'm right, and let's figure this out. So, yeah, the Shredder, just a bad week for the Shredder. I'm just going to say that.
Another team that I saw that was way too high on a couple of these, way too early preseason top 25s, which, by the way, again, like I said, the list season is all about like getting people like us to kind of talk about them. But rosters aren't complete yet. You don't need to put out a way too early top 25, especially when you have Auburn in your top 10. Auburn was terrible this year. What makes you think that they're going to be way better next year?
Yeah. Well, and just in the same vein, I do want to point out the Shredder had Aaron Judge and Kyle Tucker ahead of Juan Soto. Aaron Judge played center field all of last year. So, yes, while it is very likely that now that Juan Soto is gone, he will move back to right field. He hasn't played that position yet. I don't know, semantics, whatever. Yes, we will get into some of these too early top 25s because you can pick where we go, Drew. We can talk about what our own Andy and Ari did recently on On3, but credit to them at least. They did a live show the other day where they said, no, we want you to come in and you make your case for why we're wrong, why we should have this team higher or this team lower, or why so-and-so should or shouldn't be ranked. So
let's
they
start
had,
with Andy and Ari,
that we'll start with the good guys here that we, respect. Also, no bigger fan of Avery Johnson than Andy Staples anywhere. But they only had 3 Big 12 teams ranked: BYU at 16, Arizona State at 17, and K-State at 20. And honestly, if we're looking at this, I think this is probably the least insane. I think these teams probably are better than the aggregate of where they end up in these rankings. But certainly they're at least within each other to where I think it's right. It's just K-State is, like you said, they don't lose as much as I think people assume in terms of what impacts them. Also, I think you have to consider the fact of what they bring back in growing experience. Like we talked about it yesterday, but you would think that Avery Johnson is going to take a step as a year 2 starter and not have the Rocco Beck stagnation that took place. But I don't have as big of an issue with this. I just think K-State or whoever the third team in the Big 12 is will probably end up a little bit higher than 20th. But I'll see what you think here.
Here's my problem with Andy and Ari's is that it takes until number 16 to even get a Big 12 team in the ranking, and there's only one non-Big 10 or ACC or Big 10 or SEC school because Notre Dame is just kind of their own entity. But having just one like ACC Big 12 school in the top 15 is pretty wild to me. But I think that the Big 12 champ would probably be higher than 16. I have issues with Illinois at 7. Just bothers me.
Illinois didn't come anywhere close to beating any of the good teams they played this year. And then they also went to overtime with Purdue, who was terrible. And they didn't really blow anybody out this season. I mean, they won by 6 against a 5-win Kansas team. They had a win on the last play against Rutgers. They were in a dogfight with Northwestern to close out the season. They lost to Minnesota. It wasn't until late that they finished things off with Michigan. They needed overtime against Nebraska. Like they were a fine team, and their win over South Carolina was impressive. But I'm with you. 7 seems a little too high for a team that this would be the one that I would kind of give the treatment to. Like I talked so much last year about teams that maybe hit their peak and they're a regression candidate. They're like Oklahoma State was going into this past season, where you look at them and say, okay, maybe they hit the best they could possibly be this season. We don't think about that a lot, but there is a world where even if you bring a bunch of guys back, like Illinois will, that they peaked. And that schedule, in theory, I haven't looked at it, but should probably be a little bit tougher than what they faced this year. So, yeah, that is one that I would gladly agree with you on having issue with.
Whoever wins the Big 12 will probably be better than Illinois and Auburn and Oklahoma and probably one of the 3 between Tennessee, Alabama, and LSU, if not 2 of the 3. It just feels disrespectful for me, like just as the whole conference, to have the highest ranked team number 16.
Yeah.
When you have 1, 2, 3, 4, when you have like 6 as he sees schools ahead of them. When like that the number 15 team LSU is probably going to have, if you're basing this off of what they could end up as, that number 15 team LSU probably has 4 losses. They're still saying that team is probably better than whoever wins the Big 12.
Well, and I just, at this point, are you really going to trust LSU under Brian Kelly? Like, he's proving to be a massive fraud and failure down there because, I pointed out the three coaches that LSU had before Brian Kelly all won national championships at LSU. And he's gotten down there, and Notre Dame has clearly gotten better in terms of where their national standing is from when Brian Kelly was there, namely actually winning a playoff game, being competitive kind of in a national championship game. That's an Auburn and Michigan right there. Michigan's got to prove that they can put a quarterback on the field again. I get it. They beat Ohio State, but
I just have issue when you have half of a conference in the top 15 of the country. Like, yeah. That's just not going to be how it works.
And that's where the SEC bias and talk comes from, is that it's just that, it's bad process is what I would say, is that even if you can't differentiate which Big 12 team will be higher, you have to think to yourself, okay, over the last however many seasons, the Big 12 champ has finished in a certain position that was worthy of, different considerations. So just for reference, this year in the final college football playoff poll, Arizona State was 12. And that was like pretty low, most people would think. So the worst was there was a Big 12 team that was 12th. Then you go back to 2023, as we are aware, Texas was number 3 as the Big 12 champ. Oklahoma State then was 20th as the runner-up in the league, but that was kind of an odd year. You go back 2022, we know how that went because K-State won it, and K-State ends up being 9th in the final college football playoff rankings, and TCU was 3rd. So you had a pair of top 10 teams there in the final college football playoff rankings. And you can go back the year before that, 2021, and look through. Baylor was 7th. Oklahoma State was 9th with how this played out. So it's bad process. It's how I talked about last year when K-State didn't have a single player on the all Big 12 list preseason. I said, I get it. It might be tough to figure out who it's going to be, but you really think that K-State isn't going to have one of the best players at any position on offense or defense? Like, there's no way K-State can have the talent we think they have and possibly have the season we think without them having a player there. And as we found out, K-State ended up getting a handful on the all Big 12 list. So again, I don't think this one is the most egregious in terms of where the Big 12 sits or where K-State necessarily is in relation to the other Big 12 teams. I think all three of those, no matter the order, will probably have a better aggregate there. Let's go ahead.
Let's go quarterback list next.
Oh, you want to get into the quarterback here?
I know that you'll be fired up, so I want to beat you to this one.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll take a break from the team stuff because I do want you to know that I have another very easy Mason Voth target. Stuart Mandel did a too early top 25. Drew, did you see his?
Oh, I didn't see this one.
All right. Well, we're going to let that sit. We're going to let everybody think, oh, what did Stu do, to make me stew about Stu? We'll get into the quarterback rankings because Avery Johnson, he also got himself a dose of disrespect from these rankings. He was the number 20 quarterback in On3's Impact Top 25 quarterbacks for this coming season. And you go, okay, 20, based on what he did last year, like that's not the most insane thing. It also, some of this is probably giving a little bit of credit to what K-State has around Avery Johnson, where you go, okay, some talented players, like he doesn't have to be the guy to do everything necessarily, but let's get into the guys that are ahead of him because there were 5 Big 12 quarterbacks that were ahead of him on this list, including Sam Leavitt, who is number 1 on this list. And again, this is not necessarily saying this is a top 25 quarterbacks list, but in terms of their impact and everything else, it was kind of strange that Sam Leavitt ended up number 1. But I'm not going to dog Sam Leavitt. I think in terms of the quarterbacks we're about to talk about here, he's probably the other one that I would put up there with Avery Johnson as the best in the Big 12. Josh Hoover of TCU checked in at 11, and then Baron Morton of Texas Tech at 17, Sawyer Robertson at 18 from Baylor, Rocco Becht at 19 from Iowa State, and Avery Johnson at 20 for K-State. That is how the Big 12 shaked out in this list. So, Drew, let it rip on Avery Johnson being heralded as the sixth best quarterback or sixth most impactful quarterback in the Big 12.
All right. So this one isn't even like a shot at Avery as much as it is, again, just bad process, I think. Because if you have Sam Levitt at 1, Texas Tech has the number 1 transfer recruiting class in the country on 3, on 247. And I'm sure that if ESPN did it, they'd be number 1 there and on Rivals as well. Why would Baron Morton not be like number 2? Like, why would he not even be ahead of Sam Levitt? Like, if you think that Texas Tech is bringing in all this talent, but kept a quarterback that has been average at best so far in his career, why would he not be the number 1 most impactful quarterback? The other one, and this is the one I wanted to get ahead of you on, what's Diego Pavia impacting at Vanderbilt? That they make a bowl game again?
You know me and my Diego Pavia stance. I've thought all year he was the most overrated quarterback. I get it. He's gritty. He grinds. He's the right type of guy for Vanderbilt because he's going to play hard and all this other stuff. But I think he's wildly overrated. He gets talked about like he's the best thing to happen to college football. And it's just like, sure, I guess, whatever.
He's actually the worst with this junior college.
He's kind of an old whiny dude that wanted more play. Like, dude, you went and played junior college football. You didn't have to do that. You know, that's my biggest thing. People feel like things go wrong or they're getting disrespect. It's like, you didn't have to go play junior college football. You know, I'm sure you could have walked on somewhere. I'm sure that you could have gone and just been fine doing something else. Yeah, that one's odd. I think he's wildly overrated in the way that people view him. But then also I would just, go and look at the Big 12 thing. Yes, Sawyer Robertson played better. And look, there's been no bigger Sawyer Robertson supporter outside of Waco than I think DY and I. But I mean, we'll see. Baylor had a pretty light schedule this past year, and then they kind of got worked in their bowl game against LSU, which surprised me, and that was a mediocre LSU team. And then Rocco Becht, even though it's just a spot, I get it to some extent. You think he's got a year of experience on Avery Johnson, essentially, in terms of, he was a redshirt sophomore this past year. He started 2 years. Avery Johnson only has 1. But Rocco Becht, the upward trajectory is not there for him. He flatlined this season, and he did that having the best wide receiver duo in college football, statistically speaking. I think Iowa State was the only team in the country to have 2 1,000-yard receivers. You're losing both of those guys, and the numbers weren't a whole lot better or different this year than from last year for Rocco Becht. I thought maybe you'd see a little bit more from him. He's a good quarterback, and I think he's, I'd have him in probably my top 5 in the Big 12, but the rise isn't there. Whereas I go back to you and I talking after the game in Boulder, and we both referenced the same tweet from Shehan Jayaraja from CBS about the throws that Avery Johnson made in that game is, he's making them now, but eventually he's going to make them consistently. Like, that's how people see it. That's how I see it, and I think it happens. And then not to mention the fact that if you look at the last handful of games when K-State did incorporate the run game for him a little bit more, it looked a lot different. It was impactful. We saw some of the more big-time throws throughout the course of the season. And I think that this offense is just going to shape up in a way that's better for him now. I'm fully on board with the wagon of Dylan Edwards and Joe Jackson at running back is going to make the K-State offense and play calling better than what it was this past year. And that's not a disrespect to DJ Giddens. He's the best running back out of the 3 guys there, but his style didn't necessarily mesh with, I think, the style that K-State needs to play. And we saw in the bowl game against Rutgers how that kind of worked out with Dylan Edwards and Joe Jackson, and then Avery Johnson being able to be a little bit more creative at times. No doubt things that Avery Johnson has to get better about, but if you're giving all these other guys credit that just kind of we haven't seen a ton from or just burst on the scene. Avery Johnson's got the higher ceiling, and he's shown more to me than I've ever seen from Josh Hoover or Baron Morton, because I'm not sure Josh Hoover's beaten a team that's won more than 6 games yet in his career. So,
yeah, I also just think that if you think that K-State's going to be one of the top teams in the Big 12, that's again just bad process. Like, you got to have the quarterback higher.
My thought exactly.
Let's go Stuart Mandel. I'm fired up now.
All right, yeah, everybody strap it on for the Stuart Mandel top 25. So he actually a lot of respect for the Big 12. He had 4 teams ranked. K-State was last out of them though at 23. Arizona State at 9, BYU at 10, Baylor at 19, and K-State at 23. Real quick, I want to say one more thing about the quarterback list. Sun Devil Gabe Swartz pointed this out to me, but he said, if you're going to have 6 Big 12 quarterbacks on the top 25 impact list, and you think that BYU is going to be a top 10 or 15 team next year, how is Jake Retzlaff not on that list then? So that would, that kind of goes into the same thought process you have along with like Baron Morton. How would he not be higher in terms of what you have going on? I thought that was a good point, but this goes to everybody loving up BYU and what they have going on here. Arizona State at 9, that's ambitious because I get that they don't lose a ton. They only lose 1 offensive lineman. It just so happens to be their best offensive lineman. And they lose the dude that was the entire reason that they were still in the game against Texas, and that's Cam Scatteraboo. And you're not going to be able to find a running back that can match to what Scatteraboo did for you, come close, unless you just got wildly lucky. So I think it's ambitious there. And then to have 14 spots of separation between K-State and the best team in the Big 12 feels faulty. And then there we go, Baylor at 19. I mean, what is the thought process there? Again, no bigger supporter of Baylor throughout this season than myself. And yet I can look at it and say, I don't think they're better than K-State going into next year. I don't know that they really beat anybody that blew my socks off. And then that LSU bowl game, that really sticks with me because I would have expected Baylor to win that. If Baylor was as good as they were trending and thought to be against that LSU team that had that disappointing of a season and wasn't that good relative to what they should have been, Baylor should have won that game in their home state against LSU. And they were down 2 scores for a majority of that game and never really had a real chance to win it.
Yeah, my problem with Baylor, again, is kind of like that bowl game, but also you got to look at what Baylor has been good at least this past year. And you'd think Dave Aranda was supposed to be like one of the biggest defensive minds in college football. They were horrible defensively all season. And when you kind of look at that and like what the identity of the coach is, that just feels like you're kind of gambling in terms of what they're going to be next year. BYU is just an intriguing team to me because they're kind of the team that I think might be the regression candidate because I think that they were kind of playing above their weight class for a lot of the year. But I'm fine with Arizona State being towards the top. It's just I don't think that there's that much separation between like them and K-State because you look at who each team is losing, it's very similar in what they're bringing back. Like they're both bringing back their quarterbacks that were in their first year starting. They're both losing some all-time running backs at their schools. They're both bringing back their number 1 receiver. So they're not that much different when you kind of look at them. But what really this intrigues me about is what does the preseason Big 12 media poll look like at Big 12 Media Days now in Texas again? So we're making progress.
Yeah.
But what does that poll look like this summer? Because I would have thought that with how much buzz there has been about their transfer class, that we would have saw Texas Tech in the top 15, top 10 on some of these way too early top 25s. And a lot of them have Texas Tech just out of their top 25. And I think that kind of proves that we are not the only people that need to see it to believe it with Texas Tech.
Yeah, and I think that's probably something where national media has felt like they've gotten burnt a little bit because Joey McGuire is such a guy that's easy to get on board with, and you've seen what they've brought in, so you think, hey, this is going to work, and it hasn't yet. So they at least have learned their lessons there. Team like Baylor, it feels like they haven't. BYU, it's kind of like maybe drinking a little too much of the Kool-Aid after last season. And I like Kalani Sitake. I've always been a very on board with Kalani Sitake type guy.
Nicest coach in the Big 12.
But if you look, like it's been very rare for him to replicate the success that he had last year after year. He did in 2020 and 2021, had back-to-back 10-win seasons. Now, I would say the schedules there aren't necessarily comparable. They were still independents, and also that 2020 season, most teams didn't even get to 10 games played, and BYU somehow played 12 despite not having a conference championship mixed in there. So a little inflated, but most of Sitake, it's 9 wins, then 4, 7, 7, 11, 10, 8, 5, 11. They're a regression candidate. And I would also say it's because if you look at what they lose, yes, they bring back Jake Retzlaff. They bring back Chase Roberts, which is a big deal at receiver for them. And Harrison Taggart is going to be back as well at linebacker. Like, that is a big deal. But they lose a lot of their pass rush on the defensive line, and then they also lose quite a few of their defensive backs. And if you look at what BYU was this year defensively, they were pretty good against the pass, and one of the biggest things that got them to the point where they were looking like a team that could maybe navigate through the Big 12 undefeated was the fact that they were forcing a crazy amount of turnovers. And number one, we know forcing a lot of turnovers is typically not replicable a season later, especially when you lose all the guys that created the pass rush to force some bad balls and then the guys that were able to pick it off. That's where I have my issue with BYU. They're a pretty good regression candidate.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I just don't know if you can get turnovers at the high clip that they had, that's not repeatable. The other thing, as much as I hate to say it, but like Iowa State should probably be in some of these preseason polls. Like, they're not in as many as you'd expect.
Well, and that's also then what would make the Rocco Beck thing kind of curious. But Drew, you're asking for more Iowa State. Let me give you some more Iowa State. Here's what ESPN had for the Big 12. BYU at 9, Iowa State at 11, ASU at 14, and K-State at 16. So this is giving some high-end Big 12 respect, but this is where I do have to come in and toss some water on it and say Iowa State, while maybe they should be ranked, they are the team that should be in that 20 to 25 range because of what we talked about already. They lose so much production at receiver that's going to change them. They also lose some significant play on defense. They bring a good number back, but the guys that they are losing are really, really big blows. I mean, think about what we think the loss of Jacob Parrish is for the K-State defense. Double that on offense for Iowa State with the two receivers, and then go to the defensive side of the ball and take a guy or two away there that are really impactful. And that's what you get with Iowa State. So I'm with you, Iowa State, because of Matt Campbell, because you bring back Rocco Beck, probably should be in the top 25. They should not be at number 11.
No, probably a little bit too high. Like, they should be in that 21 to 25 range. And honestly, I'm good with K-State in like that 16 to 20 range. As long as there's like good process and not like, what in the heck is this team doing there? But again, brought it up on the last one. Another one that doesn't have Texas Tech in.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Red Raiders, you've been found out. Just let's make that clear for everybody. The other thing
that everybody's wait and see.
Yeah, here is, if for anybody curious, this is the full ESPN Too Early Top 25. There's LSU at 8. Just getting the love that they want to give out there. Some of the others then in there. Alabama a little bit higher there than some others. I've seen some that have had Alabama in that 20 range, basically, because year one wasn't fantastic for them. Tennessee, I get the defense was better this year, so you're going to lose some stuff there, but that's one that would probably feel like with Nico, you'd probably put him in the same area as like a K-State and Arizona State. And then, Florida, I think they're on the right path with Lagway. It's just a matter of, are they actually going to be, good enough to come through? So overall, not as egregious here. I just think they got the Big 12 all out of whack.
Yeah, not as egregious. Ohio State at 1, I understand, but with so much uncertainty at quarterback, I don't necessarily love. The other team that I'm surprised isn't getting like a ton of love, but they've been in like this same spot, is why I'm bringing it up with the ESPN ones. Is South Carolina feels like a team that is probably going to be a little bit higher. They're a team that is very intriguing because I think it goes one of two ways next year. Like they're either really, really good or they're just going to be like 7-5.
Yeah, that's I'm with you on that one. It's easy to kind of pick apart all these right now, and there are people that would look at it and be able to say, here's why I think K-State's not going to be able to live up to it. But I think K-State is going to be a pretty good team. So I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna try and pick them apart here. I have a little bit of faith. I think you have to look at who the coach is, what the track record is there. Chris Kleiman has the track record, and that's where you would give a guy like Matt Campbell some credit too. You just have a little bit more faith in the coaching job he can do. But some of the others, they kind of have to go through and prove it. Also, we haven't even really talked about the hilarious Heartland College Sports preseason Big 12 list that they did, where they had K-State 6th in the Big 12 next season. So that's just a little one to throw out there. And if you're really interested in it, you can go try and find that on your own. But that was I don't know. It was kind of a wild one. Have you seen that one, Drew?
Yeah, I've seen it. It's list season is just wild. Like everybody gets so like deprived of college football on like the day after the national championship game that there's just lists everywhere.
Yeah, lists galore, just dominating everything we got going on. But yes, I don't think K-State's getting their due, because in every one of these that we talked about, K-State ends up clocking in as kind of the last of this order. I don't think that's how it's going to play out. And you mentioned earlier, what do I think, or what do we think the Big 12 will look like come media day and the preseason poll comes out? I am going to guess that Arizona State is number 1 and K-State is number 2 at the end of it. And then BYU would also be in that mix with the top 3. And then probably Iowa State or Texas Tech. I think Baylor will go under the radar within Big 12 circles, but I think the Big 12 people, they can kind of get into the Texas Tech hype a little bit easier for some reason, myself included. I mean, I think I had Texas Tech like 3rd, not this past season, but the year before that or something.
Fun that it feels like the whole getting to Arlington hinges on playing in Ireland, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's not a great feeling. But you know what? If you want to see the game that determines who plays in the Big 12 championship, Drew, you can go to cats2ireland.com. See K-State and Iowa State in the 2025 Aer Lingus College Football Classic in Dublin, Ireland. Not a part of the United Kingdom. I again apologize for getting that wrong. I feel bad. That was a stupid thing on me to get wrong, because I knew the right way. I just did not verbalize that. All right. We didn't get your fun fact. We got to get it.
So the Ireland fun fact today is about Guinness. Because we're talking about Guinness a couple days ago. Guinness was brewed for the first time December 31st, 1759. And Arthur Guinness bought the land and the lease for the brewery for 9,000 years.
Wow. That is insane. I was going to say, I was like, are they still on the original location? But if you bought a place for 9,000 years, I'd imagine that you probably aren't moving until your 9,000 years are up. So, okay, say that. What year was it again?
It was 1759 on New Year's Eve.
In 10,059, the lease is up.
That's just a lot of math for me to be doing right now.
That's I think that's my favorite one so far.
It's It was first brewed at the St. James Gate Brewery in Dublin, by the way.
All right. Well, we'll have to get on that. There are some things that I want to look into doing while we're over there. I am every time. It's probably really silly of me, but every couple of days I look it up and try to think, is there any way that I could pull off driving the 3.5 hours into Northern Ireland and going to play Royal Portrush, which is the site of the British Open this year? Because yes, I want to play golf over there, but if I have the opportunity, I really want it to be at like one of those courses that I see. So I'm toying with that idea. It absolutely will not happen, but I keep thinking to myself, well, maybe I can make this happen, find a way to do it. We'll see. Probably not.
Genuinely thought you were about to say that you were trying to figure out a way if you could drive to Ireland.
No, I'm not going to do that. But you know,
we can go to St. James Gate because it's on James Street in Dublin. I'm looking at a picture of it right now.
Okay, all right.
There's the brewery.
Well, we'll have to check it out and see the place that'll be there for 9,000 years. Let's get into talking a little K-State basketball. The Cats get rolling this weekend. First, the K-State women will get to tip off. They'll play at 2:00 on the road in Boulder. Unfortunately, I don't think it's referred to as the Coors Event Center anymore. I think it's just the CU Event Center. So speaking of breweries, I guess Coors too poor to afford sponsoring Colorado, or they weren't seeing positive returns on their investment. Yeah, it does appear to be the CU Event Center now. That's
by the way, 9,000 years from 1759 is 10,759.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Yeah, that's right. That makes sense. So, okay. Yeah, we'll talk K-State women for a quick bit. We know that Aoka Lee will not be playing, but they have the opportunity now to continue the gift that was given to them from Oklahoma State in the midweek when TCU went on the road and number 9 TCU blew a lead, and then OSU almost blew a lead, but the Cowgirls hung on. They beat TCU. So K-State is alone in first place at 7-0 with, I believe, 11 games remaining in the Big 12 regular season. Again, here we go doing math, but we are. What do you think K-State has in front of them? Because like you said, this is not the Colorado team that beat K-State in the NCAA tournament last year.
No, this is a Colorado team that is probably going to struggle to make the NCAA tournament. What is interesting when you kind of dive in more on Colorado, though, they've only lost one game at home this season. Now, some of that is who they have played at home and who they've played on the road. Like Colorado played at TCU in one of their first games of Big 12 play and played at Baylor. They do get a return game with Baylor in Colorado, so that will be a little bit interesting. But it is something to kind of note. They beat West Virginia in Boulder earlier this season, so they are capable of winning on the road. But this is not the same Colorado team, I think, even really close to last season. And K-State's going to have to adjust. And what they're really going to have to adjust, like we've talked about, is their offense, I think, can sustain no Aoka Lee, but it's going to be, can their defense still be as dominant as it has been all season? Because to be honest with you, in that Arizona State game, it really was not.
Well, and we saw, and this wasn't, I don't know, it's not necessarily the reason for it in this particular game, but one of the first games last year without Aoka Lee, it may have been the first, was that game at home against KU, and the defense could not sustain over the course of the game. It was not at the same level that it typically was. So it is going to be kind of fascinating to see how things work out for K-State now and kind of what comes their way. I will say the one thing that they'll have going for them against Colorado, who likes to be a little bit more forward heavy in terms of where they're getting their production, K-State is going to have the size advantage with that. Even their forwards, the tallest is like 6'3", of like a heavy contributor for them in terms of what you get from scoring output. So K-State will have that. I think the thing that will be interesting to me now, kind of watching moving forward, is how does K-State replace Aoka Lee in terms of what you're talking defense and just really presence on the floor. You're obviously not going to get the same kind of scoring ability or whatever else, but are you going to be able to kind of shore things up inside and not skip a beat? And I think last year, having the experience that most of this team does of playing without her, they might be able to manage it better. Because early on, without Aoka Lee, they won some like that. They had that massive win at Baylor that it felt like they were just kind of riding on the whatever they could get out of it. But then eventually it caught up to them, and then Aoka Lee came back, and I think the team was just out of sorts from that point with the way that they had to change how the season had flowed. I think they'll be better prepared for it this time, and we'll see if some of that depth that it felt like K-State had early in the year is able to come back. We know that it is there in certain spots, but is it going to be able to make up for no Aoka Lee now? Because that was early in the season. The thought was, oh, Kennedy Taylor was eating up minutes. Well, she hasn't played that much in Big 12 play. Like it's gone back to Eliza Maupin, who, at times shows some serious flashes, but you're going to be asking a lot more from her now. And, she logged 22 minutes in the game against Arizona State, where, again, like you said, the defense was a little dicey and concerning in that game just because Arizona State's not a great team. So this will be a fascinating one for them. I think they still take care of business, but this will start to give us an idea of how they're going to be able to handle things without Aoka Lee this year.
Yeah, if they're going to win the Big 12, this is going to have to be a game that they have to win, because even though Iowa State is down this season, which is kind of wild with how much they returned, that they've kind of just plateaued, that's still going to be a tough game next week. And it's a game that kind of makes you feel a little bit uneasy and uncomfortable about where the season could go, because you have to win at least one of these two games coming up. You do get the added benefit of playing at home Thursday night against Iowa State next week. But again, if you win both of these, you're probably in that and it's still in the driver's seat, because TCU has a tough schedule down the stretch. TCU plays Baylor at home on Sunday. Will be very interesting, because I think that TCU is a candidate to kind of regress as the season goes along, because they play 7 or 8 girls per game. 8 is probably their max that they play. So it might be something that you kind of maybe want Baylor to get another loss in Big 12 play. But like you said, the K-State is used to this situation. You need to get something out of Kennedy Taylor, because that's been the real killer in Big 12 plays, that they haven't really had that answer. Eliza Maupin flashed against Arizona State. Amani Luster, I think, is still a year away from being somebody that can be a really good player in the Big 12, so, which is why you need Kennedy Taylor to really step up and just be able to share that maybe 20 minutes apiece between her and Eliza Maupin.
Yeah, the minutes for her have fallen off a cliff since conference play began, essentially. The only game she's played 10 minutes in was the win against Texas Tech. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do that. Hey, 7-8, it can be done. I saw the 2015 Bueller Crusader girls only play 6 girls a game and make it all the way to the state semifinals, Drew. So, it can be done.
Well, I will
shout out
say
to John McClain.
Competition level probably a little higher.
Yeah, probably. Wait, are you saying that Labette County is not as good as TCU?
Probably not.
That was the first and only time ever that I got to see Bueller take down the hated and disgusting McPherson Bullpups on the basketball court, and they did it twice that season. It was a spectacle. So there you go. And they did it against former Oklahoma player and 3-point sniper Taylor Robertson.
Oh,
so
there you go.
Yeah, I certainly enjoyed seeing K-State have success when she was there, because the hate for Bullpups, it never dies, Drew. It never dies. Just want to make that clear. So as I talk about Cody Stufflebean all the time, love what he's doing for the Cats, but man, you just can't get off the fact that he went to McPherson. That's a tough pill to swallow. We'll move on though, and we'll talk about the K-State men, who they also get to play this weekend. Are you excited for what we're going to get to see from K-State this weekend against West Virginia rolling into town. Weird season for the Mountaineers. Probably better than what some would have anticipated. I kind of like some of what they're doing. Their issue is they lost to Arizona State at home this week, and they also are pretty banged up. So K-State, who's been getting closer and closer, it feels like, might be on the verge of getting that Big 12 win. And there's a chance that they win back-to-back because Oklahoma State comes to town in the midweek next week.
Yeah, I think that K-State has a legitimate chance to beat West Virginia. They've been up and down. We talked some point this week about just teams in the Big 12 in general. West Virginia is a weird team because at the time of that they beat these teams, they have 4 top 10 wins, but also have a loss to Arizona State at home. Also got just trounced by Arizona at home after they beat Arizona on a neutral floor in November. So weird team to really figure out. They kind of go right now with DeVries out. They go as Javon Small goes. Javon Small was horrible against Arizona State. He was 0 of 8 from 3 and I think 2 of 11 overall. So you kind of shut him down. They struggle to score because this feels like a thing, and I'm going to need to really look into, is this how the games are being officiated in this league, or is it more of a stylistic thing? West Virginia is another team that just can't get to the free throw line this season. And the only team that gets to the the only player that really gets to the free throw line is Javon Small. So just that's something that I'll need to look into. But I think that K-State has a legitimate chance to win this game.
Yeah, I think K-State is going to have an opportunity to win this game. They certainly can. It's just going to come down to number one. We've been calling for it, but the shooting needs to get a little bit better for K-State. We saw it against Baylor to some extent. They ended up finishing the game close to 38% from three, but they also have to defend it better. And we saw last year K-State didn't necessarily defend the only guys for West Virginia that could kill you. Can they do it this year? That will be interesting. But West Virginia is a vulnerable team for all the reasons you mentioned and just the fact that they're missing some guys. And you don't know what you're going to get with them. Obviously, the volatility for West Virginia, there's a really high end to which they can play, and there's a pretty low end. And a little surprising, like you said, to see them get blown out at home by Arizona and then losing to Arizona State at home. That's just not every team in the Big 12 should look at a home game against Arizona State as a winnable game, just like you would if Oklahoma State or K-State or Cincinnati right now come in. Like if you lose at home to those teams, that's not good. You're dropping a game on most of the league. So West Virginia has dropped those at home. Now you factor in that they're going on the road. I think K-State has a real chance. It's just we can only hear so much about how K-State thinks they're close. At some point, is that feeling going to wear off? And we do see these guys just pull the plug, and it's tough to get them up for every game. It really just depends on what the mindset is right now for everything. But I think K-State's got an opportunity, so we'll see. And we'll have full coverage on K-State, West Virginia tomorrow, as well as today, continuing with some of our preview and stuff before the weekend.
2-0 basketball weekend inbound.
All right, Drew's calling it. He likes it. Do we go a step further? We think K-State 2 back-to-back wins now. West Virginia and Oklahoma State coming up.
Yeah, why not? I said on the live reaction after the Baylor game that they're going to beat Oklahoma State, so I feel like I got to stick to that now.
Okay. All right. Well, we're getting bold predictions here. One other final note with predictions to close out this show that had everything for you if you were looking for it. The Big 12 released their preseason baseball poll yesterday, as well as K-State releasing their full TV schedule for the year. The Wildcats picked 8th in the Big 12 preseason poll. Higher or lower than you anticipated for K-State?
I'm going to just split you and say about where I expected. Like they lost a lot, but they brought in some talent from the transfer portal. From my understanding on how this baseball team is going to work, it's going to be kind of the opposite of a lot of teams that K-State has had recently. I think that the pitching is going to be a lot better than the bats, at least at the beginning of the year, because they replaced a lot in the lineup, but bring a lot of their arms back. So interested in how that kind of works out. And Pete Hughes loves him some early season tournaments against good teams. So we're going to find out real early about where this season's going to go.
Yeah, that is true. Well, I don't know. It didn't go very well to start last season. They ended up in a super regional. So I don't know that we will know. If they're winning games, then obviously we'll think a little bit differently. But yeah, the perception going into the start of the year is not as high as it was last year for K-State. But I think people should be encouraged to look at it as this team might be more centered around their pitching this year than their hitting, because in all forms of baseball this day and age, pitching is the currency. Like, you have more pitching than the other team, you're typically going to be better off. But especially in anything college baseball and lower, I mean, it is brutal to watch baseball that is at this level or lower, because so many teams have guys that can't throw strikes, and it is a grind to watch pitching, as K-State found out at times last year. They were good enough last year that if they got good pitching, they could really come through, because the bats would catch up at some point. But it wasn't enough ultimately, and we know how often last season they had some real dicey moments on the mound. So if it ends up working out for them, I think it's better to be pitching oriented in college baseball than it is hitting, because you can scratch them across. And look, there is no better coach in college baseball in attempting to scratch off one run or two than Pete Hughes. So he at least has the managerial style to match up with a team that's built more around pitching than hitting, because that would be the fault of his over the last handful of years, is crafting a batting order and making decisions on do we bunt here? What are we doing? Are we playing small ball? Are we trying to do the long ball? Like, it didn't jive with a lot of people. I know. I still get heat from defending him like 5 or 6 years ago from one thing he did in a game against Oklahoma that they won. And I was like, look, he made the right decision there. And people just immediately identified me as being a Pete Hughes defender and sticking up for him. Look, I'm with you guys. It has gotten to a maddening point. I think Pete Hughes is a phenomenal college baseball coach outside of the in-game stuff. I think in-game is where he's learning, especially at a program like K-State, on how to kind of get through some things. And obviously it all peaked for him at the right time last year, with K-State being able to get through Fayetteville and go to a super regional. And now we'll see what the path looks like. But I think some people were probably surprised at it being 8th, but like you said, Drew, that's probably in reality the right spot for him. The other workings of the Big 12 baseball poll: Oklahoma State, the preseason pick at 9. Arizona gets 4 votes. They are second. TCU gets 1 first place vote in third. West Virginia 4th. Texas Tech 5. Arizona State, UCF, K-State, KU, Cincinnati, Houston, Utah, Baylor, and BYU. K-State and KU separated by only 3 points in the voting, and the Cats did not have a single player named to the preseason All Big 12 team. So
the other thing that I'll point out with the baseball schedule, again, like I said, that Pete Hughes does love him some non-conference games that are challenging. K-State plays at North Carolina. They're number 6 in the preseason. A game at Arlington against Arkansas. Again, oh God, and Arkansas is number 5.
Yeah. They played TCU in Arlington too.
I love playing TCU in Arlington as a non-conference game. TCU's preseason number 23, and then a game in Frisco against number 3 LSU. So we're gonna see what this team is made of before March begins.
Yeah, it'll be a fun time, and not to mention the fact that you look at some of the other like they're facing Coastal Carolina, who has typically been a pretty solid baseball program. Like, they've got a lot lined up for them. In just the way that it currently sets up, they are facing, like you mentioned, the number 6 team, the number 5 team, the number 23 team, the number 3 team, the number 24 team in non-conference play. Number 24 ends up being Nebraska, who K-State will face there. So it'll be exciting to see. And the most anticipated game for me, my birthday, April 2nd, the Cats roll into town to try and take down the Shockers at let me get this right. Tyler Field at Gene Stevenson Park at X Stadium. So there you go. That 3 names for the Wichita State baseball facility now. Certainly putting Gene Stevenson's name on it, well earned and deserved. The other stuff, though, at this point, that's 3 names might be a little too much for a baseball stadium. I think we can do the field at the stadium or the park. Can you have a stadium and ballpark all in one? That is my question for the decision makers at Wichita State. I don't really care. I'm just going to make fun of you for having 3 names for your baseball stadium. So,
by the way, it kind of looks like if you judge it on what K-State basketball has posted, it looks like it might be a 2-tone kind of game tomorrow.
Okay. Well, this is a stunning development.
Cats by $1 billion if it's 2-tone.
Well, somebody get Fan and his graphic on K-State's uniform breakdown and see. Actually, has K-State lost in the 2-tone? When would have been the time that that's happened?
They beat the crap out of Oklahoma State once on the road. I think they won last year in the 2-tones.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who they played against. They played Oklahoma State in them a couple of times.
They do love playing Oklahoma State in the 2-tones.
Are they cherry picking the 2-tones? That's the question that has to be asked of everybody right now.
I actually remember 2 ass kickings with K-State in the 2-tones against Oklahoma State. One was the game that Sean Neal Williams almost had a double-double, and another one was on the road.
Well, I think they did it. Yeah, I think they did it both times in 2019 against Oklahoma State. And I love to just reference the fact that we look at that and we saw what they did in Stillwater. And it's like, man, it's going to be tough to beat a team much worse than what K-State just did here. And then Oklahoma State came to Manhattan a couple weeks later and they beat Oklahoma State even worse. I miss those days of really god-awful Oklahoma State basketball that everybody could kind of laugh at. But yeah, I think you're probably onto something there. Could be a 2-tone type of day, and that'll be exciting for everybody. Give you a reason to go out and watch the Cats. They may not win, but they're going to look good doing it, honoring some K-State history. We think they're going to win. We think they're going to win, so you don't have to worry about that either, folks.
I tried to do a little bit of research just quickly about to see who the 2-tone game was last year, but K-State has taken off who the Legends game was last year, so that doesn't give me great vibes.
Okay. Well, everybody that's listening, you can shut this off right now. Don't continue. And then I'm also telling you can't complain if you say, wow, it was a real dud and slow to finish off the show. Yeah, I get that, but I'm giving you permission to shut it off. So this is just fair warning. But we're not done until we figure out who it was last season. So we can narrow down. It was at least the Big 12 game, right?
Well, that doesn't really help any. Nine options here.
It wasn't UCF, correct? We don't think no, they wore the whites against UCF, the ugly whites. Baylor, that was a weeknight game. I doubt it was that one.
It might have been Oklahoma State again because it's always on a Saturday.
Okay, it was white Wildcats against Baylor last year. Let's see that Saturday 70. I think you might be right, Drew. Yes, you were right. It was Oklahoma State last year, 70-66 for K-State. So yeah, there you have it.
Cats by $1 billion because it's 2-tones again.
Also,
but not against Oklahoma State.
I want to ask you this: are you a bigger fan of the original set of 2-tones that when K-State brought him back, or do you like this one better? I get that there's not a great difference between them, but I like the look of what the 2019 team wore for him as opposed to this year.
You guys gonna say I like the originals probably a little bit better, but there's such a small difference in the two.
Yeah, I thought the purple popped a little bit better, and I like the shorts better. So
I can't wait for the tweets from national people about what is K-State wearing when this is a thing that they do every single season.
Well, that is the tradition with this at this point now is getting people that don't normally watch. Every year they're befuddled by the fact that K-State is wearing these. And just for reference for everybody, I want to show you what I'm talking about with the differences of the uniforms. I know is people think this is silly. This is serious business for me. So let me just get the 2019 version saved, and I'll throw it up there then. So okay, we have K-State, the two tones. They're lovely. Everybody knows how beautiful they are. Here is what they currently wear with them. That's Tyler Perry last year. You get a decent look at what it looks like. And then this is what the 2019 team looked like wearing them.
The shorts look significantly better in the 2019.
Yeah, I don't know. Those look like they'd be like really baggy and heavy, and like they're not, because that's how basketball shorts are made now. But like you know those like heavy silky shorts that were probably pretty popular when we were like in middle school or just before. That's what those look like. The 2019 ones, they look sleek, they look nice, and I don't know. I like the way that it was more of kind of like an electric lavender that they had going on here, as opposed to it's a little bit more subdued with the new ones.
It is a lot more subdued. I wouldn't even say it's a little more subdued after going a little comparison there.
Now, putting the outline on the numbers is a better touch on the current ones. So that's good at least. But yeah, I don't know. Bring those back. Or if some of those are floating around somewhere, just send me one. I want one of those for safekeeping. It doesn't have to be, one of the four guys on the screen, one of the four good players from the 2019 team. You can give me Sean Neal Williams or
Levi Stockard,
Nigel Shad. Can I get a Nigel Shad or James Love lavender jersey? Somebody hook me up there if those are still hanging around in a basement somewhere or wherever they might be with K-State. So that'll do it for us. Again, if you hated the last 7 minutes, that's on you for sticking around. We appreciate you if you were one of the ones that stuck around and didn't hate it or even liked it. Thanks for that. And then we'll be back again tomorrow. Not Drew. DY will be with me live after the Cats and Mountaineers from Bramlage Coliseum. DY is also going to have some women's coverage for you tomorrow. That is the women's basketball team, not his coverage of women in general. So I just wanted to make that clear for everybody. And then
good clarification.
Yeah, I'm sure people would love to get, DY's thoughts on a lot of other things, but it will be a K-State basketball specific tomorrow. We'll see. He may give you something else. I don't know. I'm trying to think of anything else that we've got that will be earth shattering. I know Drew's got a ton of other recruiting stuff that he's saddled with right now. So you're probably getting a commit watch in the near future, a big board. You're going to get everything you need because we are shifting gears from transfer portal season to back into 2026, even 2027 guys. K-State just offered the number 4 player in the class of 2027 today. What was his name, Drew?
His name is, I got to look up what his actual name is. His name is
Ethan
Feaster.
Why was that funny?
Because apparently his nickname is Booby, so he's Booby Feaster.
Juvenile sense of humor from you. That is what K-State gave out as an offer today. Look, good for them swinging for the fences. I don't know if that's going to work out for him, but yeah, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I went and looked at his profile. I was like, oh, he is the number 4 player in the class of 2027. That might be a tough swing for the Cats.
Also offered Go Power Cats Ryan Gilbert's son.
Yeah, Ryan Gilbert II was offered today as well. So keep track of everything going on K-State recruiting-wise, whether it is unique names or somebody's fictional son. As everybody knows, that is my favorite game that gets played over at KSO. So for anybody that sees a recruit's name come along and you think, oh, I wonder if he's related to so-and-so, whether you're being serious or joking, go to K-StateOnline, get signed up if you're not, and be sure to post who you think it might be related to, because I absolutely love those. Trying to think of the one the other day that I saw that I thought was just very clever and out of nowhere. That was good. I know Donovan McNabb has a Donovan McNabb Jr. out there, so I don't like those when it is clearly somebody's kid. You're like, is this Donovan's boy? Yeah, it's Donovan's boy. That Donovan. I like the more funny and obscure ones. I gotta find the one that I had the other day because it made me laugh. I gave it props with a like on there, but now I can't even remember what it might have been or what day I gave it out. But it was somebody's boy.
That is the killer.
It is tough. I mean, my favorite all time is whoever. Shout out to whoever it was that on. Was it Drayton Knoll?
Yeah, Drayton Knoll.
And somebody said Grassy's boy. I mean, that just a killer. That's one of the tops of all time.
You can't say killer and Grassy Knoll.
Well, they do kind of go together, I guess. Unfortunately, R.I.P. JFK, actually dead, and I know that's a sad thing for people to talk about. And tie a bow on it, bring it all together. We get to go down to DFW for Big 12 Media Days this coming summer, so that's exciting. Back in the Metroplex where Big 12 Media Days belongs, where I can drive to it, and it's not a travel problem. Much prefer being able to do that. I know some people were upset about it. Consider me somebody that would rather go to Dallas, Texas than Las Vegas, Nevada. Sue me.
Agreed.
All right. That's the way to end it. For Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. Thanks for watching and listening to K-State Online. Back again live after the Cats and Mountaineers tomorrow.